Okay, here we go. I'm Amanda, and I should probably be reading, but instead I'm doing the BookTube Newbie Tag. So hello, you have found your way to my channel, welcome, and today I am introducing myself to the booktube world with the BookTube Newbie Tag. This tag was made, I think, in 2014, so it's been around for a while. Many a fabled booktuber have done the BookTube Newbie Tag, and I am now the most recent. So I hope you'll join me in getting to know me a little bit, and as we go through the questions. Question number 1 is, why did you start this channel? I have been watching BookTube for quite a while. The name of my channel is actually kind of a play on the idea that I should be reading instead of watching YouTube, so that every time I click on my channel on our TV, I click on the YouTube channel, it reminds me Amanda should be reading. I've been kicking around the idea of starting a BookTube channel, and for various reasons, mostly being anxiety, I haven't done it yet. I put it off for so long that my husband, about a year ago, decided to make his own BookTube channel because I'd been talking about it so much and what a good idea I thought it was. And he, who is also an avid reader, thought, that does sound like a good idea. I'm going to do that. And he has a great channel that's been running for a year, and you should check it out. Traven's Tomes, it's great. I am somewhat of a recovering reader. I used to be an absolute bookworm who read all the time, read constantly. It was most of my personality in school growing up, is that I was always reading. I was never without a book. I always had a new world I was in. Even if we were just going in the car for a few minutes, I was lucky that I didn't get car sick while reading, so I would just read all the time. After undergrad, and then again after grad school, I hit an absolute wall. As an English major, and then in grad school, I don't think it matters what your major is, you're doing a lot of reading. I had been reading so many things that weren't my choice, and having to consume them on such a different level, like critically, rather than consuming them for enjoyment, that I just hit a wall, and I wasn't reading anymore. I read a lot in between grad school and undergrad. I went to Japan for a while, and I read a ton while I was in Japan. But when I came back, I just stopped reading for fun. It was harder to do, and I don't know why. And it was strange because I still considered myself a reader, even though I wasn't reading. I was still buying books. I buy a lot of books, but I wasn't reading them as regularly as I used to. And so now I'm kind of trying to get back into reading. And hopefully through the wonders of social accountability, making a YouTube page and sharing my readings and thoughts with all of you will help light a fire under me and get me reading again. I have been reading a bit. I tend to read a lot when there's a readathon on or something that feels like a deadline. So I'm hoping that extending that to my own channel and maybe having video ideas that I'm trying to film to get up will help me read more. I have 2 children now, and my daughter is just getting to where she can read independently, and I want her to see me reading. I want her to see that reading is something you do all the time, that reading is fun. Because when I grew up in a family of readers. Reading was something people did all the time, and so it was natural for me to grow up loving books because there were books all around and everyone was reading. Reading was something people did for fun. And I want my daughter to see that in me. She sees it in her dad. She definitely understands that dad loves reading, but I don't want to be left out from that. I want to reclaim my identity as a reader. Yeah. And I want my kids to grow up seeing that reading is fun and great so that they grow up to be readers too. That's probably the main reason, but I have 2 kind of smaller reasons, secondary reasons, additional reasons. The first of which is because I would like to find more book friends. Finding friends as an adult is hard, and it's hard to get out there and meet new people, especially when you have 2 kids like I do. So I'm hoping to find a small group of like-minded book nerds who I can just share my ramblings about books with. And the second reason is I've been a stay-at-home mom for about 3 years now, which was not always the plan. And I miss making something. I miss having something I've created and doing something. A lot of my time focuses on my kids and doing stuff for them. And so I don't always do things that are completely mine. And so with this, I'm hoping I can feel more of that sense of accomplishment, of that personal rush of seeing something through and getting something done, and just having that feeling that there is something in the world that I made happen that no one else could have made, and it exists now because I made it. It's probably silly, but I miss creating things, accomplishing things. I love my kids to death, and I'm so blessed to be able to stay at home with them, but it's mom's time now. Question number 2 is, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to BookTube? This, I think, is the one question on this tag that really shows its age. This tag was made in 2014, and obviously the BookTube space has changed significantly in 10 years. I imagine when this tag was first created, that question was incredibly useful to say, oh, I review sci-fi and mystery, or I plan on doing these things with my channel that no one else is doing. But now there are so many people who review all kinds of books that it's more about, I think, vibing with the personality rather than what exactly the content they're making is. Because a lot of the content booktubers make is similar. We make reviews, we make TBRs, we make hauls, we make recommendations. It's all things that you've seen, and that's probably more of what you'll see from me. But you'll see my spin on it. So hopefully if you vibe with whatever is going on here, you'll enjoy it. Question 3 is, what are you most excited for about this new channel? Part of what excites me about this undertaking is reclaiming that status as a reader, being able to feel confident again that I am a reader. There's a picture I saw online that kind of has a progress as a reader. I'll put it here. It has my whole personality is reading, and then there's this dip of absolutely no reading, and then goes back up again. And I feel like I've been at that bottom trying to climb back up and not quite getting all the way back up to the rest of the hill for a while. And so I'm excited to be a reader again. I'm excited to get that part of me back. Yeah. I've never not been a reader. I've always loved reading, even when I'm not reading all the time, but I don't know. It's something I want to kind of reclaim as part of my personality again. Question number 4 is, why do you love reading? And here's where I get to nerd out a little bit. I love language as a concept. My degrees are in English and linguistics, and language is a miracle. The fact that I can make these sounds with my mouth, and that you, a person completely displaced by time and space, can hear those sounds, and the ideas in my head become understandable to you in your head because you hear these sounds I'm making, is insane. Language, I feel like because we learn how to speak and even read and write at a fairly young age, we lose the awe of how amazing language is, because it's something we do every day. Some of us do it kind of nonstop. So it's easy to lose the appreciation of just how amazing language is. The fact that there are people who wrote things down hundreds of years ago in countries I will never visit, who then through time, those words can stay the same and I can read them. And the ideas that they had then are preserved for me to absorb with my eyeballs into my brain is amazing. The fact that people can create entire worlds in their head, write them down, and therefore transport me into those worlds through nothing but the words they wrote down, the ink on a page, is amazing. Reading is a miracle. It's absolutely amazing. And I don't think we think about that much. I think we kind of take for granted that talking and reading is just a standard thing that humans do and not something that sets us apart from every other species on the planet. And yeah, I'm a giant language nerd and language makes me so happy. So hopefully maybe I've made you appreciate the awe, the wonder that is language, any language. I am rambling. Language is a miracle. I love it. And that's why I love reading. Moving on. Question number 5 is, what book or series got you into reading? And I have, like I think I said earlier, I've been reading as long as I could remember. I grew up as a reader in a family of readers. Reading has always been something I've done. I feel like this question is better suited to someone who maybe didn't read a lot as a kid or in high school and then started reading more as an adult and knows what book or series just really grabbed them and made them be like, oh, reading is cool. But I don't really have that, so instead I'll share a cute story about me as a child that involves books. So when I was a kid, I loved this book, and this is not my childhood copy. This is a copy I bought for my children. This is The Day Jimmy's Boa Ate the Wash by Trinka Hanks Noble with illustrations by Stephen Kellogg, and I loved this book. I was probably 2 years old, and I had this book memorized. I would look at the words. I knew when to turn the pages, to where when people who didn't know me saw me with this book, they assumed I was reading it. And they were astonished because I was far too young to be reading it. And my parents had to assure them, no, she's not reading. Has it memorized. And so whenever my love of reading came up, this was a story my family loved to tell. And so it's kind of like the first book I ever read. And it's funny because my children both have books that they have done the same thing with, that they just picture books that they just read over and over, even though they can't read the words, they kind of mumble their way through it, and it's adorable. I found this copy at a local library sale a few years ago and knew I had to pick it up for my kids. And it's kind of sad because it's personalized. And I feel bad for Anne. Like, did Anne not want to keep this book? But my daughter now loves this book as well. She likes reading it where I read the mom's parts and she reads the daughter's parts, all about on the class trip to the farm, which is extra funny because her class the past 2 years at school have visited a farm. So she has great context for this. And it's a fun read. It's a great book. I don't hear much about it anymore. It was a Reading Rainbow book back in the day. So maybe people of a similar generation to me also have fond memories of this book. But it's not one I see talked about as a classic very often. But if you are looking for kids' books, I recommend this one wholeheartedly. It is great fun. It was my favorite book as a child, and maybe it'll give your kids good memories too. So after I read Jimmy's Boa for a while, some of the earliest series I remember really getting into as a kid were the Boxcar Children series. I loved the Boxcar Children. I had a bookshelf full of those books. There were over 100. I had most of them. Every time we went to the store, I would pull out the next one that I needed, and I figured out very early as a child that if I asked for a candy bar or a toy, the answer a lot of the times would be no. But if I asked for a book, the answer would almost always be yes. I kind of figured out that reading was a way to game the system with my parents because they valued reading and they wanted me to have lots of books that I enjoyed. I had a ton of Boxcar Children books. I had everyone I could get my hands on. And then I also got really into the American Girl books. Samantha was my fave. I loved Samantha. I ended up getting the doll and a lot of her accessories. Later, I would go on to read books about some of my favorite TV series, the novelizations of those books or books set in those worlds, like Ghostwriter, another reading-centric show, as well as The Secret World of Alex Mack, which has nothing to do with reading, but I know I read a bunch of those books. Question 6 is, what questions would you ask your favorite booktuber? This is a tough one because I feel like a lot of the booktubers I follow are very transparent about their booktube journeys. They're transparent about negative comments they get. They're transparent about feeling burnout. They're transparent about getting caught up in reading things for videos as opposed to reading what they want to be reading. I've watched a lot of good videos by content creators on the site about the downsides they've felt in BookTube, to where I don't even need to ask them about those things because they've talked about them greatly. They've talked about their journeys in getting where they are and the pitfalls along the way. So instead I don't know, what would I ask them? I don't know. What would I ask my favorite booktuber? How was your day? I would ask my favorite booktubers, how was your day? Have you been drinking enough water? Do you need a break? I feel like there's a lot of advice out there for starting a BookTube channel and about BookTube, so maybe I wouldn't need to ask them about that. Maybe I could just ask them how they're doing. I could ask them all what good movies they've watched recently, because if I like their taste in books, maybe I'll watch their taste in movies, and they don't all talk about what they're doing outside of books. So that's what I would ask. I would ask what kind of movies have they been watching recently. Question 7 is, what challenges do you think starting a BookTube channel will be the hardest to overcome? Y'all, I'm an anxious bean. I talked about feeling accomplished, and I'm a crafter and a writer, and so I'm looking for that similar rush of when you finish a piece and you know you have created something and it's great and you feel really confident. But that confidence tends to completely vanish to me once I put those things out in front of other people. And that's usually in front of people who like me and are probably going to say nice things because they already like me. Putting myself out on the internet is frankly terrifying. I am comforting myself in the reality that maybe 10 people are going to see this video. Maybe 2 of them who I don't personally know. While I would love to share my thoughts with people, it's the internet. BookTube is huge. So I'm trying to remind myself it doesn't have to be perfect, that nobody's BookTube videos are perfect, and to just let it ride. While I want to put out good quality videos, I'm hoping I can get out of my own perfectionism and anxiety and just do it. Just try for a while. I also anticipate time being an issue. I have 2 kids. They are loud. I don't really have a room that is good for filming that I can shut myself in with a door. I'm currently in my library that is open. There's no door over here. It just goes straight into my kitchen. Filming mostly takes place while the kids are asleep, which is eating into my time to do anything else by myself. This is me time. This is the time I have to do things without my kids, and if you are a parent, you know that time is precious. Finding the time to get videos planned, made, and edited is a little scary. Time is a difficult thing to manage for everybody, and I'm no exception, so I anticipate that being a major challenge. Especially since my husband is also booktubing, and we have 1 camera and 1 computer, so there might be some battling over who gets to film when. I don't know. We'll have to see how it all balances out. Question number 8 is, when did you start reading? And like I said before, I didn't start early, but I do have a cute story from elementary school I will share about reading and learning how to read. When I was in the 1st grade, I was in a cluster class of kindergarten and 1st graders. And of course, part of the role of 1st graders in that class was to help mentor and encourage the kindergartners. I believe we had time where we worked with them on things and we're kind of like peer mentors. I have a very vivid memory of the 2nd grade when I was at lunch, and the 1st graders were leaving lunch as we were sitting down. And one of the kids who had been in the cluster class with me as a kindergartner, his name was Matthew, came running up to me as I sat down for lunch. He had gotten special permission from the teacher to come talk to me, and he ran over to me and said, "Amanda, I read a book today." And he was a kid that I had helped in kindergarten, that I had sat with, and he was a struggling reader. I still remember the absolute pride and joy I felt that he wanted to tell me about it, that he had mastered this skill. But not only was he proud of that accomplishment, I had meant something to him as a mentor in the 1st grade, as a child. I had meant something to him to where he wanted to share that accomplishment with me. And I have never forgotten that. It's a silly little thing that happened decades ago, but it's a very special memory. I think it's a feeling that you can only get when trying to teach someone something. That secondhand pride, that knowledge that you helped someone get there, and that they appreciate you, that they know that you helped them, and they want to share that pride and that joy with you. It's great. I feel like this question may be, when did you start reading recreationally as a hobby? Which for a lot of people is during their adult lives, but for me wasn't. I read constantly as a child. I always had a book. I still, to this day, evaluate purses based on how easily they can hold a paperback. If it's too small to hold a paperback book, it's not a very good purse. If it's big enough to hold a paperback book, good purse. Question number 9 is, where do you read? And that answer used to be everywhere, but now I don't leave my house as often. I am a stay-at-home mom with a 4-year-old. I spend a lot of time at home, and I do most of my reading at home on my couch. I don't read a lot in bed, usually because my husband is sleeping and I don't want to keep him up. And I just find that if I read in bed, it doesn't help me go to sleep. It prevents me from sleeping. I will just keep reading the book. I was the kind of kid who stayed up late and with the covers pulled up and a flashlight, or with the light on low in my room, curled up real close so I could read, and turned it off real quick if I heard someone coming up the stairs. If I read in bed, I'm not gonna wind down and go to sleep. I'm just gonna read the book. So it's better to keep those two things separate. And like I said, usually if I'm reading late at night, which is when I do a lot of my reading, I don't want to disturb anybody. I'm trying to get more into audiobooks so that I can read when I am doing other chores and things. When you're busy and you just want to be able to read, but you really need to do the dishes, an audiobook is great. What kind of books do you like to read? Question 10. What kind of books do you like to read? Finally, a question about the actual content of this channel, potentially going forward. I read fairly widely. I like adult books, I like young adult books, I like middle grade books. I'm currently reading a lot of picture and early reader books with my kids. I love reading novels. I like nonfiction, although I'm not reading as much of it as I'd like to. I love graphic novels. I love manga. As for genres, I love mystery. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. I'm not a very wide romance reader, but I did recently dip my toe into some romance with some recommendations from a friend, and the ones that I've tried so far I've very much enjoyed. I lived in Japan for 3 years, so Japan has a special place in my heart, and I have an entire shelf over there of Japanese literature, translated literature from Japanese, books by Japanese authors, books about Japanese folklore, books about Japanese history. I love reading books about or set in Japan. What else do I like? What do I like? Do I like reading? I don't know. What do I read? Nothing right now. That's what we're trying to fix. And the final question is, what does your book collection look like? My book collection is a mess. It is also massive. We have bookshelves in almost every room. These shelves look very nice. At least the ones you can see. I'm hiding things on shelves you can't see right now. Do other booktubers do that? I don't know. A lot of our bookshelves are kind of chaotic for various reasons of reorganizing or just not quite having enough room. Our comics and manga are currently in utter chaos because I need more shelves that I'll hopefully be getting around Christmas this year. Fingers crossed. So I'm not going to show you a book tour yet. Maybe one day when we get them settled and I get all my shelves cleaned and everything looks nice, you can have a book tour. That sounds like a lot of work. We have a lot of books, you guys. When you have 2 English majors who get married, the books start to accumulate at a rapid pace. I envy people who can make a TBR shelf or a TBR area of all the books that they haven't read, but my husband and I are both readers and we share these shelves. So if we were to divide books up by TBR, we would have to have 4 sections. Books neither of us had read. Books he had read but I hadn't. Books I had read but he hadn't. And books both of us had read. And that sounds awful. I would assume that most people who are able to make shelves of books that they have not read, those very concentrated TBR shelves, are the only readers in their house, or that they store their books separate from their spouse. Maybe they have different taste. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on which part of this conversation you're in, I guess. My husband and I have very similar taste. We don't love everything the same, but we enjoy a lot of similar genres. So it would be difficult to organize our books that way. I don't know how much crossover my husband and I are going to have on our channels, but if we do a book tour, it's going to be a joint effort. I know we don't want to do that twice. But hopefully one day we can give you a better look at it. But today is not that day. So that wraps up the BookTube Newbie Tag. Thank you for watching if you've made it this far. I am flabbergasted. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please do all the YouTube things. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to tell YouTube you want to see more of me for some reason. I don't know. Why would you want that? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. I am terrified that real actual people might actually be watching this. Let me know if you have a channel. Let's be friends. Let's be book buds. Let's chat about books that we all love and hate. Sometimes hate is fun. Thank you again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye. Why are you still watching? Are you still watching? Why are you watching?